time of preparation for the Easter celebration, and it should be so for all Christians. Lent calls us to prepare. It causes us to take pause in our busy schedules, to take time to reflect, to evaluate ourselves. How well are we living out our faith as a disciple of Jesus Christ? Our scripture this morning talks plainly about faith, works, grace, justification. Now, these are all terms we throw around quite a bit as Christians, especially in church on Sunday mornings. But because of this, I believe it's very important that every Christian knows what these words mean. And it's not only important that we can define these for ourselves, but we also need to be able to explain what they mean to other people, especially those who may be new to the Christian family. I'm still surprised sometimes by how many Christians, some of them frequent church attenders, who are still somewhat confused by these terms: works, faith, grace, justification. Now, I know that many of you know these terms well. It's old hat for you. You could easily sit down with somebody who's maybe not a church person and explain these out wonderfully. We all need to be able to do that. But it never hurts sometimes to get, have a little refresher course, we might say, right? These terms, they are what Paul is using to try to explain to his readers in the church in Rome, when he begins to talk about Abraham. And this would be someone that his Jewish audience would be very familiar with. Abraham was justified by works. That's what Paul says. If in fact Abraham was justified by works, then he had something to boast about, but not before God. If. That's the big word there. If. In other words, even Abraham's best work could not match the standard of holiness that was demanded by God. Likewise, not a single one of us has a list of accomplishments in the area of good works that is long enough or good enough to meet God's standard. Back in chapter 3, Paul explains this concept of every person's failure to reach God's standard by stating that for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. All. Verse 23. Now, to get this point across, the scriptures use the imagery of an archer that lets an arrow fly at the target, but the arrow falls short. To live up to the standard of the law, the arrow must hit the bullseye dead center perfect to meet God's standards. But Paul says we fall short of God's standard. Now, if we fall short, it really doesn't matter how short we fall. Whether it's an inch or a yard short is short. And that clearly places us all in the same place. We are then all in need of a Savior. This means that every one of us stands accused by the law and deserves to be punished for our offenses, but Paul reminds his readers that Abraham believed God and it was reckoned to him as righteousness. It was through his faith. Faith means we are willing to believe God's promise that Christ's sacrifice will be sufficient. One of the requirements of faith is that we are willing to take a leap when we may not be able to see where we're going to land. What's that old adage? Look before you leap. Well, if we're employing faith, we sometimes have to just leap. Consider the African impala. I'll bet we've seen those in zoos. The African impala is an impressive athlete by any standard. It can cover over 30 feet in a single bound. It can jump 10 feet high in the air. But if you go to a zoo, you will often see them kept in their area with a 3-foot fence. Now, how is that possible? It's because that an impala will not jump when it cannot see where its feet will land. It will not jump if it cannot see where it is going to land. Faith, you see, is the ability to trust that we cannot always see, but to go ahead and trust God and take that leap anyway. Faith is one of the fundamental practices in Christianity. As Christians, we need to be absolutely sure we understand what faith is. It is our faith in God's ability to save us through the work of Jesus' sacrifice that makes us righteous and allows us to stand before a holy God, in Luther's terminology. It is because Christ became the perfect sacrifice for sin, fulfilling the demands of the Jewish law for the sacrifice of atonement that allows us to be covered by Christ's righteousness. It is not based on our performance or anything that we have accomplished through our own good works. It is a free gift that we receive just for the ask, even though we have not earned it, and we've done nothing to deserve it. That is grace. There's an old saying that when you're looking for a job or you want to get something done in your community, it's not what you know that matters, but who you know. The same thing is true in God's kingdom. It's not what you know, but who you know, Jesus Christ, and your acceptance of the gift of salvation that comes through Him that enables us to be justified before God. In my case, my very best work and all the good things that I have ever done to help someone else will not be enough to meet God's standard. But if I have placed my faith in Christ to do for me what I can never do for myself, then I am justified before God, and I have gained access to heaven. On the topic of good works, author Ralph C. Wood wrote this in an article that appeared a number of years back in Christian Ethics Today. He wrote, Martin Luther believed that false good works serve as a roadblock on the path of salvation. Works righteousness is what Luther called this false notion that we can merit the mercy of God by our own good works. It is indeed a deadly doctrine. If we think God owes us anything, then we do not know the God of the gospel. We are not saved by boastful works, says Paul, but by utterly unboastful grace. Only in Christ do we boast, the apostle declares elsewhere, by pointing away from ourselves to the Savior who hangs from the cross. The German religious painter Matthias Grunewald's masterpiece, Isenheim Altarpiece, gets the order of things right when it shows John the Baptist standing beneath the cross and pointing with his long finger away from himself and to the man who has been nailed on the cross for our sins. From the mouth of the baptizer issues these words, "May he increase that I decrease." Without the gospel of salvation by grace alone, through faith alone, we get the order backwards, he writes. Christ decreased in order that we may increase. It is by grace alone, through faith alone, that we are justified before God. I am justified because of Christ's righteousness imputed or assigned to me, not because of anything I have done. Grace and salvation is something God freely gives to us for the asking. It is not something we earn or that we even deserve. That's grace. And then there's that word again, justification. Do you know as a Christian, do you as a Christian understand the doctrine of justification? Do you understand it well enough that you could sit down with a person and explain it out to them? Someone who may be a new Christian, who doesn't really know? Well, let me tell you a story that might help. There was once a successful businessman in England who retired, and for his retirement, he bought himself a brand new Rolls-Royce. Now, this story takes place a long time before cell phones or internet or the Channel Tunnel that connects England and France. He and his wife were just planning to spend a week or so driving around Europe, seeing the sights. So when the day came to leave on their trip, they set off on a ferry. They had to load the car on a ferry, and it took them over to France where they were unloaded. They drove through France, made it into Germany, and then the car started to have issues. The engine was clearly not running right. So they were able to make it to a small village. When they pulled into the village, they found a payphone. Parents, if you have children under 12, you may have to explain to them what a payphone is. Well, they found a payphone, and then the man placed a call to a dealership where the car had been purchased, and explained to them that the car had some sort of a mechanical problem and the engine was clearly not running correctly. The dealer reassured the man that he had nothing to worry about, that the problem would be taken care of that very day. And he suggested that he and his wife just go do a bit of sightseeing in that area of Germany. There was many things to see, points of interest. And so they did exactly that. And it wasn't but a few hours before a mechanic arrived. You see, the Rolls-Royce company actually flew a mechanic out from England to Germany. And the mechanic brought with him tools, spare parts, and everything he needed, and within a few hours he had the car running like a new watch. No problems. He apologized to the owner for the inconvenience and informed the owner that he was free to continue on his trip, assuring him there would be no more problems. Well, the man and his wife, they spent the next several days touring Europe, had a great time, finally returned to their home in England. But for several days after returning home, the man was a bit anxious because he knew that that could not have been cheap. And even though that he was sure that it was covered under the warranty, I mean, to fly a mechanic from England out to Germany, he was sure there would be bills that would not be covered under the warranty. And so after several days of worrying about this, he just picked up the phone and he called the dealer where where he had purchased the car. And he explained what he wanted. The dealer promised him that he would find out and get back to him as soon as possible. So the next day, the man received a phone call straight from the Rolls-Royce factory. And the factory representative wanted to know what the man's name was, and on checking his records, he thanked him for his purchase of a new Rolls-Royce. "Yes," said the man. "It never caused us any more trouble the whole rest of the trip. But I need to know if there are any fees that are not covered by the warranty so I can be sure to pay you for them." And the man on the phone from the dealership from the factory sounded a little puzzled. He said, "Repair bill? Sir, you must be mistaken. We have no record anywhere in our files that anything has ever gone wrong with a new Rolls-Royce." Now that's justification. See, these are fundamental beliefs in the Christian faith. If we have accepted the salvation that God offers us through Christ's sacrificial death on the cross, and if we are putting our faith in Jesus Christ's righteousness instead of our own good works, then by faith, through grace, we are saved and justified before God. And this is the only way that any of us can stand before a holy God. We are like a criminal who is guilty and has been convicted, but then acquitted of the crime. If we place our faith in Christ and we have confessed our sins, then we have been forgiven. Our record has been expunged. So, if we were to stand before God and say, "Well, I tried to be good, but there have been times when I have failed. Therefore, I'm counting on Christ." It is then that God will look at his records and say, "I can't find anything in our files that says a true disciple of Jesus Christ has ever done anything wrong." Yes, that's justification. Faith, works, grace, justification. These are some of the fundamental points of the Christian faith and doctrine that we need to be sure we not only understand for ourselves, but we need to be sure that we're capable and prepared to explain them out to someone else who may not know, who might be new to the faith, so that we might be salt and light. Amen. Let's pray. Loving God, we thank you for your word, which enlightens us and explains what you actually accomplished for us through the death and resurrection of your Son, Jesus Christ. Lord, help us to learn these things, these principles, well enough that we not only understand them for ourselves, but we can help someone else